Day one and the traditional start to this week-long event, a prologue time trial through the streets of Paris. And the man in shot here, Thierry Marie from the System U team, the new hope of French cycling after his fine performance in last year's Tour de France. He made a perfect start, winning the prologue. Etienne de Wilde here riding in the colours of the Belgian national champion was another of the fancied riders, and he's had a great early season so far. Pedro Delgado here, winner of the Tour de France last year. His role in this race was to be that of a domestique. Last season he lay low in the early part of the year, showing no form at all as he built himself up for the Tour. And Laurent Fignon, seen here, pushing it along as he attempted to get his season off to a good start. He's had his ups and downs. Twice a winner of the Tour in his early years, he's struggled ever since to recapture that form. But he did well here, finishing third, just 1.5 seconds down. And Stephen Roach, who missed most of last year because of injury, on his comeback trail now. How would his legs stand up is the big question. How would this young Fager team stand up to the big boys? Roach did himself well, fourth in the prologue, just 3 seconds behind Marie. But his luck was to change the very next day, as he now explains.
It all happened so fast. I was riding in the front just before 2 kilometers to the finish, and there's a lot of pushing and shoving and everything else. And then the lads started falling on the right. They started falling and came right from the right hand side of the road to the left hand side of the road, and I was just going through it. There was a small gap, and I was just going through it, and all of a sudden I was hit by a bike, and before I knew where I was on my back on the ground.
So, not the start Roach wanted, and while he was picking himself up, Etienne de Wilde won the stage. But Roach was still in contention, in 5th place, just 3 seconds behind the leader, Thierry Marie. Day 2 now, Roach at the front of the bunch here. He was to fall again on this stage. But for Fignon, seen here, the struggle was too much. Dropped by the bunch, he scorned the help of his teammate and decided to pack it all in. Somehow the old fire doesn't seem to be there anymore. De Wilde won this second stage also. It was his 9th success of the season so far. He was now race leader, but Roach was still among the leading contenders. He was 4th overall, just 10 seconds behind. The windy conditions added to Roach's fear about the 3rd stage, the team time trial. It was a struggle for the Irishman's team as he tried to limit his losses. By the finish, he had dropped to 8th place, 41 seconds off the pace. The Toshiba team were to take full advantage with the time of the 3rd place member of the team, the one to count. They were easily the fastest. To project their new recruit, new pro, Lawrence Bezzo, into the race leader's jersey. And so to stage 4, and the first real test for the climbers, which includes the short, sharp climb to Montfaron. And despite the trepidation he must have been feeling, and some tummy problems, as ever, Stephen Roach was cheerful on the surface. The Toshiba squad was to set the pace as they protected Bezzo in his race leader's jersey. But the young Frenchman was suffering stomach trouble like Roach and was soon out at the back. Roach carried on, but it was a struggle.
It was very difficult, and there was a lot of wind all day, and it was finished on top of the col of the Montfaron. It's not a very big call, but it's 6 kilometers long, and it's fairly steep. So, all day I was having a little trouble because I was a little sick because I've been taking medication for the inflammation I had in my knee after the crash the other day, and I was fairly warm down here now. It wasn't agreeing with my stomach, so it wasn't the best early on. So when we hit the last hill then on the Montfaron, then I just got better and better, and I started off in 30th place or so, and I climbed all the way up, and I finished the last 2 kilometers very, very fast, and finished 5th on the stage. So for me it's very encouraging.
Happy Roach then, 5th on the stage, and now back up to 2nd place, just 23 seconds behind the new leader, Marc Madio. And so to day 5, and Roach stocking up here for the battles that lay ahead. Victory was now very much a possibility, but this stage was to produce the most significant move of the race, as Miguel Indurain from Delgado's Reynolds Spanish team and Gerard Roux from the System U squad got away with 22 kilometers to go. They gained more than a minute on Roach. Roux took the stage, but significantly, Indurain was a new leader. The next day, Reynolds set about protecting their man, and as Stephen explains, they had the strength to do it.
The team that's with him here in Paris needs actually a team for the Tour de France, like with Pedro Delgado and Julian Gorosty, who's also a very good rider, and plus a number of other really good riders that are with him. So it's practically his Tour de France team that are here, so he's been very, very well protected.
And so to the final stage, the time trial up Col d'Els. Delgado, whose teammate Indurain, now has a 45-second lead over Roach. But the Irishman, we can see here producing a super ride, beating Indurain by 32 seconds and getting within 4 seconds of Sean Kelly's record for the stage.
Of course, I'm very, very pleased. You know, I won the stage, but for me that's not the most important. The most important part is the fact that I came within 4 seconds of Sean Kelly's record. And of course today was a little more windier than normally it is, and the conditions were not as good as normal. So for me that's the most encouraging, the fact that I came so close and coming back from my comeback and the weather conditions being different. So for me that's the most important significance of today. But I'm riding exceptionally well, you know. I don't think I should be too eager either, because I've come back a hell of a long way and I just feel a little bit weak in the hills, but that can come at work. So I'm fairly confident now that my worry was getting back into the bunch. I'm back in the bunch now and I'm riding very, very well, and I've come after being away from competition for over a year, and I've come back to finish second in Paris-Nice, and I won the time trial then today with being very, very strong. So all the signs are good, so I'm very happy, and I hope that the rest of the season now goes as well and even better. We don't even talk about the knee anymore. I hope, you know, it's me, all my worries are over, I hope, and hopefully in the future we'll be getting a few wins, I hope.
And indeed, Stephen, so say all of us. Good news then about that knee, but now he must build up the leg to what it was 2 years ago. But Indurain, as we can see, still had enough strength to hang on to the race leader's white jersey. Indurain the winner then, but the applause from the French crowd was for the Irishman at the end of what could be the first of many Irish-Spanish clashes on the roads of Europe this season.
207 riders signing on for La Primavera, the first of the Spring Classics of 1989. And really, Stephen Roach, the only big name missing. There's Fondriest, the world champion, Sean Kelly of Ireland, his teammate Stephen Rooks from Holland, Andy Hampston of the United States, a former Tour of Italy winner. There in the background you see Milan Cathedral. Greg LeMond of the United States, former Tour de France winner, and the man who won this race last year, Laurent Fignon. So as they get ready, underway, the longest classic, 294 kilometres. This, the 80th anniversary, and you can see conditions are not very good, very slippy there, as they make their way to the starting line. The race, over 7 hours, the riders well wrapped up, as you can see, for the early stages. Fondriest making his way there. He won that very controversial World Championship in Belgium in August of last year. The bad weather that affected the Tirreno-Adriatico race during the week is still around. You can see their conditions very bad in the early stages as the peloton makes their way along the Lombardy Plain and along the picturesque Ligurian coastline. You notice there they're all wearing their rain gear. 7 hours ahead. They'll be hoping for a big improvement in the weather, obviously. You can see the mist hanging over the mountains. They're fairly flat across the Lombardy stage, of course, until they get further along to the big climbs. Now Pat McQuaid is with us, and Pat, Sean Kelly will be expected to do reasonably well here by the PDM team.
Yes, he's had a relatively quiet early season so far. There has been a lot of pressure on him, but the pressure is really on today because this is the first of the World Cup events, and as we're looking at this very big bunch now climbing the Torcino Pass, which is about just under halfway through the race, it is true that there's going to be a lot of pressure on Kelly.
Well, we'll move along and pick it up on the Suppressa, the second last climb of the race, 22 kilometres.
Not very much used by normal traffic during the year, would be probably quite a bit gritty and so forth, and it's very possible to slip around a corner, and maybe halfway around you realise the corner is a lot tighter than it was going into it, and suddenly you're over the edge.
You can see the Ligurian coastline as they head along here towards the holiday resort of San Remo. At this stage they'd have about 15 kilometres, maybe 12 kilometres to San Remo.
See Tunis leading from Rooks, Kelly there as well. Two riders now very nearly coming down. A System U rider now running out of the road and very nearly coming down, but I think he actually stayed upright.
Well, that's what you were warning about there on those bends.
And that's the reason, as I say, that the PDMs wanted to be up the front, because by staying up the front, they stay out of trouble and out of that possibility. Now, had those two riders fallen, they probably could have brought down another 4 or 5 riders as well. And if you're further down the route, then those chances are increasing. You can see now how the descent just stretches this group out, because there's only really one line you can take on the bends and one line you can take on this descent. And as a result, every rider in one long single file all the way down. Probably, if for a spectator standing on the roadside now, it'll probably take 1 or 2 minutes for this big group to pass them by. Kelly's still up there in about 3rd or 4th place.
Alongside Brooks. Motte with RMO this year, former teammate of Fignon at System U. And we see another challenge here from the Italian. That's Bombini, Emanuele Bombini.
Bombini there attacking, and Kelly responding immediately now and on his wheel. Pensek taking the group up with Mackler on his wheel, another past winner of Milan-San Remo.
Bombini's not going to get away anyway. Kelly's sticking to his wheel. Stephen Rook's also up there. Of course, he and Sean Kelly rode together before.
Looking at one of the Italians here, Galeschi, front of the group. The Newlands of the Panasonic team moving up to the front.
So there we see Guy Newlands, 131 from the Panasonic team. PDM, that's Tunis, Gertian Tunis, a teammate of Sean Kelly. He's 147. Sean Kelly, of course, 145.
That's the first shots we've seen now of Tunis at the head of the affair now, and Tunis has taken it relatively easy. He wasn't involved in all the driving on the suppressor, so it's really going to be down to Tunis to do it on the Poggio now for Kelly.
Mark Sargent there, yeah. Haitashi.
Teammate of Claude Killian, another rider now, ex-world champion, who is in that group as well. Sargent now on the attack.
See, the sponsors are getting in everywhere now, Pat. They even have logos on the backside of the shorts.
Delion of the Swiss Helvetia team, the team of Steve Bauer, another rider in the group also, Bauer. Delion, French rider, very much riding for Bauer here in this group. So really, it looks like it's going to come down to a battle on the Poggio, as it did last year, in actual fact, when a group similar size to this hit the Poggio together, and then it really was a question of who was the strongest going over the top of the Poggio. And last year it was Fignon. As we're looking now at another attack, this time from Franz Masson of the Super Complex team. Young rider from the team of Jan Rass, his team captain Rolf Goltz, also in the group, last year's Nissan winner. But Masson, a rider who 2 years ago won the red jersey of the sprints competition in the Tour de France, and now on the attack.
Still wearing the arm warmers there. The weather obviously not too pleasant still for them.
No, the rain has stopped all right. Once they hit the coast, the rain stopped, but it's still not the usual sunshine that you would get along this coast.
Well, he's opening it out a bit there. You see the main bunch now gone down to what, 30, 35 riders?
Indeed, yeah. And attacks coming hot and heavy at the front of the group, and this is where PDM really have to be very attentive and have to watch it. 2 riders now, another rider having gone
Fignon.
up to Masson. Looks very like System U, possibly Fignon, that has gone up to Franz Masson. 2 riders now going clear as they're approaching the Poggio.
Yes, it is Laurent Fignon who won this race last year. Fignon, of course, twice a winner of the Tour de France in 1983 and... Well, they are on the climb now. We see them beginning their ascent, the 2 leaders, Masson and Fignon. And here you see the bunch beginning the big ascent up the Poggio. Down to what, 25, 30 riders in the chasing group now. They were all together really until the Cipressa, when Raul Alcala, a teammate of Sean Kelly, took the race by the scruff of the neck and really opened it up. There you see the gap.
You can see the gap, and also Fignon will be able to know what the gap is as well, because he can look down on some of these hairpin bends, he can look back and see the group coming up behind, so he can keep a constant. We see him looking over now at the group coming up behind, so he can monitor constantly what's happening in the group behind and how the chase is going on. Looking back also to Masson, and just in looking back, he's actually asking Masson to come up and ride alongside him and help him make the pace.
So they're sharing the workload well. It'll be a matter of can they keep that pace going. There you see Sean Kelly, second in the bunch, going up 145.
Something wrong here, because really I was expecting to look at that group and see 4 or 5 PDM riders at the front of the group, and I see Kelly the only one up there, so all we can assume is that something has happened, and Rooks and Tunis don't seem to be in that group for some reason or other, whether they punctured or crashed, we don't know, but the chase not really going on as it should do.
And Fignon will be quite happy with the way the race is going now. He's still got that lead of maybe a couple of 100 metres. You see the glass houses, incidentally, all the way up the Poggio. They're orchids, Pat, growing there.
That's right, this area is famous for its orchids and its flowers. And information coming through now that there has been actually a crash on the lower slopes of the Poggio, and that Tunis was involved in it, came down. Rooks was held up by the crash, and Tunis and Rooks are now back on their bikes and now chasing, so that explains their absence from the front of the group and from the chase really that should have been going on. Now that in actual fact is going to be very much to Fignon's benefit, because really the gap was about 30-40 seconds and it should have been one long hard chase. We can just see now the 4 riders coming back up to the group now, having been involved in that crash. Now that's not good for Kelly.
Very bad news indeed for Sean Kelly. We see the bunch there making their way up. They are going to get back up, but they could be a bit rattled, maybe possibly injured. We see Sean Kelly in the middle of the front 3 wearing 145. He's looking back, Pat, obviously a bit concerned there as he leads the chase.
Yeah, but we can see there's no real chase. Kelly's still looking around for his teammates to come up and do the driving. We see a System U rider alongside Kelly. He's up there just blocking for Fignon, so he is. And it looks like one of the Italian riders also up there. So really this group should be in one long line chasing the 2 leaders, and they're not as such, and that is not looking good. So the gap certainly isn't coming down, and if Fignon and Masson arrive at the top of the Poggio with a similar lead of 25-30 seconds, they are then home and dry. Going up this climb, driving on and keeping the pressure on, and he's probably making, his legs are hurting himself, and also I'm sure Masson's legs are hurting as well. But they know they've only got 1 or 2 kilometres to go to the top of this climb, and then Masson looks to be in trouble actually. Masson, that little drive of Fignon's there now, Fignon doesn't realise it yet, but Masson certainly looking to be in trouble.
Yes, Fignon certainly has intense pressure. He's looking back. I think he senses that Masson's in trouble, and he's putting the pressure, stepping up that little bit of extra pressure. Fignon out of the saddle, driving. And can Masson respond? Well, he doesn't look like he's responding there. Masson in trouble, Pat.
Masson certainly. Masson, to use a cycling expression, Masson has cracked at that point in actual fact, and Fignon has cracked him. And Fignon, as soon as he looked around and realised that Masson was just that little bit adrift, he's immediately got out of the saddle and drove on, and that's psychologically even to Masson, you know, just ruined them altogether, ruined any chance he had of staying with Fignon. So Fignon now really driving on, knowing that as last year's winner, he will remember this descent and remember this section very well anyway, because he was with Fondriest at that stage. Now here he is approaching the top of the Poggio on his own.
And looking very good at this stage, it must be said.
2 occasions. He won a Classic last year at Milan San Remo. It was his first Classic win. He didn't have a very good year after that, and a lot of people felt that he was possibly over the top and possibly didn't deserve the enormous salary which he's paid by System U and Rally. But here he is back now at the head of affairs and back now in the Classic that they all want to win, and we can see now the chase.
2 more. Sean Kelly could be there as they lead the bunch in the chase now. Sean Kelly looks like the second man there. Yes, it is Sean Kelly, 145, and in front of him the rainbow jersey of the current world champion Maurizio Fondriest from Italy. Fondriest, of course, who was second to Fignon last year.
But Fignon already on the descent. Quite a distance, about 35 or 40 seconds the gap, and really there's no way I can see Fignon being caught by the 2 chasers now. Masson is also in between. At this stage he will be between Fignon and Kelly and Fondriest.
So barring an accident now, we must say that Fignon is looking very good. Sean Kelly will he be looking back at that accident as the crucial part of the race? From the finish now. Fignon, the man who won it last year, the big Italian crowd, of course, would have loved an Italian winner again. They've had some great victories here over the years, but Fignon is looking good. The chase is on, but they've left it too late. They let Fignon go with Masson, and now I'm sure there are many men in that pack who regret that decision. Fignon raises his fist to some French supporters in the crowd. He comes around onto the home straight. Laurent Fignon, a marvellous performance by him. He took the chance. It's paid off for him. You see Masson coming around the corner in the background. Fignon looks around. He knows he hasn't won. Raises his arms. Fignon just several seconds ahead of Masson, but he's delighted. Look at that. Fignon crossing the line. His arms raised aloft. Laurent Fignon wins the race for the 2nd year in a row. Masson coming across. He'll be disappointed, but it was a good performance by him. The Super Convex rider finishes second, 8 seconds behind Fignon, and now we have the bunch sprint.
Big bunch now being led out by Chiappucci. It looks like the Italian leading it out now. We can see Kelly there, in the centre of the picture in the white jersey, swinging over towards the left of the screen. Kelly now, Pensick just on his wheel. On the right we've got the Wild in the centre, on the right in the black jersey. Kelly now leading out the group coming through. Pensick coming by. Pensick just takes him. Kelly probably finished about 5th place, I think, on the race.
So, Laurent Fignon of France retains his title, the man who's won Tour de France titles in 1983 and 1984. We see the sprint finish again, Pat. Kelly on the right.
So we can see Kelly on the right in the blue jersey. On his left is Baffy. Also
Pensac coming up.
Pensac, also there, Gaia, the Italian. Danilio Gaia, rider number 19 there, and we can see now from the front.
So Baffy there on the right as we look at it. Kelly in white, and Pensac coming up outside Kelly. And it looks like Pensac does get past Sean as well as Baffy.
Yeah, Baffy there in the of the Aristeo team in the red jersey, just taking 3rd place. Pensac 4th, Kelly 5th.
So there we see the man, 7 hours from Milan to San Remo, and he's a delighted man. Laurent Fignon of France, the winner of the 1989 Milan-San Remo.
At one stage, Lieti and Chiesa were 17 minutes and 45 seconds ahead. That has now changed, but still the first 6 in the race are from Italian teams, and 5 of them are Italian-born. The odd man out is Brian Sorensen of Denmark. But the bunch, the peloton, is now getting up ahead of steam. They've crossed the famous Old Quaremont. There are still some very tough climbs to come, another 8 tough climbs, including the famous Moor de Grammont. And in that main peloton, Sean Kelly looking prominent, as indeed is Stephen Roach. This is the longest race that Stephen has ridden since the World Championship last year, not far from here, Pat.
That's correct, and also, interestingly, it's the first time he's ever ridden a Tour of Flanders in all his years as a professional, and he certainly won't be too happy with the conditions down there now, because whilst they started out this morning in dry conditions, the weather has turned bad. They've got a slight drizzle now on the course, and that really makes conditions very, very treacherous. Certainly the conditions are really suited to Kelly. He did say this morning that he didn't feel 100%. He has had gastroenteritis over the past couple of weeks twice, and he was involved in a bad crash last Monday in the 3 days of Pan, which knocked his morale a bit. But certainly the road conditions are very suitable to him here today. He has been up the front. We saw him over the Old Quaremont climb, over the Molenberg climb, and the Patersberg, and he was up the front most of the time, and really forcing the pace on, or really following in all the moves, which is what he should do. And he really is not dictating all the pace now, whether that's because he may not feel quite as strong, or whether that's because maybe he's using his head for a change and saving himself a little bit, because there's a lot of racing to be done yet.
His left wrist today is quite swollen. I was quite surprised this morning, but as Stephen Roach laughingly said when we were looking at it, he said, "Do you think that'll hinder Sean?" And that was a tongue-in-cheek remark. That's Claude Coquelin there, former world champion and former winner of this Tour of Flanders. And he's pretty much on home territory. He's a Belgian, and Belgian riders have dominated this race pretty well since its very beginning, way back in 1913. In fact, they kept the honours of Thomond until the late 1940s. And in the last 20 years, only 3 non-Belgians have won the Tour of Flanders, and those 3 were from neighbouring Holland, one of whom was Jan Ras, who is the boss man of Super Conflicts Yoko, who have Nico Verhoeven up in this group that we're looking at the moment.
Interesting to see now. I think we're back with the second group now, and it's Panasonic who are doing the chasing, because one rider who would have missed out in that leading group is Eric van der Arden, and these conditions should really suit van der Arden. He always does ride well in bad conditions, and he should really be up with the leaders. So the Panasonic's trying to chase and trying to make the way up, bring probably van der Arden up to the leaders.
Last year, you may remember, Eddie Plankard won this from Phil Anderson, the pair of them being 18 seconds ahead of the chasers.
And confirmation, there's van der Arden there, gone through, rider number 31 there, 4th in the group, and he obviously has missed out on the leaders, and he's trying desperately hard now at this point in time to make his way up to the front group.
Bruno is there from the Chateau Dax team. We also had a brief look at Edwin van Hooydonk from the Super Conflicts Yoko team. Another fragmented piece of today's peloton in the Tour of Flanders. Mind you, the bunch generally must have taken it pretty easy at the start, which is not a surprising fact in a one-day passage. It is the Tour of Flanders. First time to ride, and he wanted to finish wherever he was to finish. Interesting, it may be his first ride in the Tour of France, but it's his last ride because he's riding today. He's retiring that bike for that evening. Anyway, The cameramen are obviously having trouble with the lens in this drizzle. It really is dreadful conditions now. And the choppers, in fact, may be beginning to run into difficulties with low ceiling as well for flying. So it could be tricky enough for everybody towards the finish of this 1989 Tour of Flanders.
Well, I certainly wouldn't like to be that cameraman on the back of that motorbike there trying to get that shot, because the cyclists will go down the hills faster than the motorbikes will. And we can see there now Kirkillion now coming up, and he had that motorbike pilot under pressure all the way down that descent, and the pilot now finding a spot there where he can move in and let the riders pass.
Kirkillion, of course, who still believes he was denied the World Championship last year, not far from here, up at Romsey, only a few miles up the road from the finish of today's race, when he had that run-in with Steve Barr. Steve Barr in the field today as well, now leader of the Helvetia La Suisse team, so we haven't seen any shot. That's a shot of Phil Anderson just going through your picture. Now a long-haired Phil Anderson, just denied victory last year by Eddie Plancart. Seen quite a number of the 89 riders are sporting long hairdos a la Lubberdink and Gert-Jan Thunes. This is the Eckenberg, just 47 kilometers to go, which is 30 miles, or they're near enough. 30 miles of racing left in the 1989 Tour of Flanders. Eckenberg is the seventh
Climb, 1,000 meters, 1 kilometer long, 12% gradient. Not very, very steep, but as we can see, it doesn't have to be steep with cobbles such as that on it now. This group slipping along, and Kelly now, having been at the back of the group, the cameraman just cut off there before we saw Kelly on that descent. Now Kelly now moving back up to the middle.
Number 3, Johan Lammert. Number 85, Brian Sorensen. And Sorensen hasn't lost many meters to anybody, but he hasn't done a pick of work, has he?
No, he just sits in the back of the group. That can be for one of two reasons. One, because he may not wish to work and contribute to the pace-making in the group. Another, because he may not be able to. Group, we can see him there, just behind him there, riding number 54, Adrie van der Poel.
Van der Poel, as you mentioned earlier on, had a very good record over the last decade in the World Cyclocross Championship. So he's used to the mud and the dirt and whatever.
See Kelly there now, hitting his hands now. It's not just wet out there, but it's also cold. Kelly trying to heat the hands up. He's obviously lost the feeling in the hands, and trying to... We're looking...
Well, that's a check now to Lieti. It's now 5 minutes, so they're grouping it back. 34 is Alan Piper, the Australian, from the Panasonic team, the Panasonic Eastostar team. What a good rider indeed is Alan.
So Kelly now trying to get himself warm, and as I say, these conditions really probably as bad as any would be in the Tour of Flanders. You've got rain, you've got slippy roads and bad conditions, and you've got cold as well. It'll be a hard man's race, and a hard man who eventually comes out on top. So we're looking at Anderson there. And really the producer really switching cameras left, right and centre, and this could be the leader. No, that's rider number 47. That's Edwig van Hooydonk. And we don't really know now at this point in time exactly where he is. To my mind, he's probably in a chasing group. He's making his way up to the leading group, possibly on his own.
I believe he's trying to bridge indeed, Pat. Van Hooydonk, oddly enough, and nice to say too, not too many accidents, despite the slippery surfaces that they've had to contend with here. Just confirmation that the identification was right, Edwig van Hooydonk, because although the numbers may correspond to a starting program, there were so many changes from the list of entries early this morning to those who actually signed in and started. A remarkable number, as many as 22 changes in the start list.
It could be we could have a bridging situation, but as it always happens in this race, you get riders all coming together, and then suddenly we get another climb or another set of cobbles, and then it splits up again. Van der Arden's group now, we can just about make out a Panasonic jersey there at the front of that group, probably Guy Newland or Louis de Koning doing the chasing for Van der Arden. 8, climb number 8, as we can see there, the Warensberg, with 43 kilometers of racing to go. The Warensberg, that's another climb of 1,000 meters or 1 kilometer and a 10% gradient.
Just over 25 miles of racing to go. And all of these short, sharp climbs of Flanders been treated with great respect by the riders. Each of the spring classics has its different characteristics that really keeps it stands it apart. And remember, they're still chasing the man who's out in front, Marco Lietti. Just over 20 miles of racing to go in the Spring Classic, the Tour of Flanders. We will be back. Rual, who won 6 stages in the Tour of Spain last year. 92 is Marc Sargent from the Hitachi team. His teammate, his leader, Claude Coquillon, is back behind in that chasing group now. What they can get going, how they can generate some speed to get up to these guys, well, I don't know. There's been some team instructions handed out to both the Panasonic and to the Aristea team, Pat.
Yes, I would imagine that once Marco came up and told Piper, look, sit back, take it easy, there's only a minute gap, you just make sure and stay well up over the Mur de Grammont, and if Van der Arden can get away before the Mur de Grammont, well, then you're going to be okay. And they're just now turning into the town of Gerardsbergen and approaching the Moor.
Yeah, 5 miles to go to the climb, to the top of the climb. That's Rolf Sorensen there. He's got his team instructions. The 7 still intact, I think.
They're on the climb now on the lower slopes of the Mur de Grammont. And the first part, we drove over this morning on our way to the finish. The first part is tarmac, as we can see here, and then they swing right in the town of Grammont and then onto the cobble section, and it just gets steeper and steeper and narrower as they go up. A very, very difficult climb, and one that is definitely going to split this group in pieces. And we can already see one rider attacking on the lower slopes of the Moor. Being chased now, we see Sorensen there, Piper still up there.
His RT and Nissan viewers will, if they want to try and relate this, it's a bit like Patrick's Hill in Cork.
It's not totally unlike it, about the same gradient as St. Patrick's Hill now along this section here. Herman's at the back of the group now, not really a climber, not a mountain climber, and certainly won't be too comfortable on this climb here.
He wants to hang in here. If he can stay intact and they all stay together, then Herman's number 74 will be odds on to win it, because he is most definitely the fastest of these men. But how much this Moor will take out of him, well, only time will tell. Marc Sargent looking strong on the climb, and Alan Piper, this genial Australian who really always gives his all. What a good team man, and what a magnificent professional he is, riding for the Panasonic team. And the word must have been from Walter Plankard in the Panasonic car path that Van der Arden has not got it today.
It's only 10 miles from the finish, as we're looking at Dag Otto Lauritsen, the first rider now leading the group, be chased by Van Hooydonk, Sargent, Sorensen and Piper. Frieson comes next, and then Herman, the back of the group.
Amazingly strong man is this Dag Otto Lauritsen. He really is driving them on there.
Position very, very
Very
risky.
difficult. Look at this, as well as being slippery, there's the mud coming onto it. Spectators been walking across from the tracks and carrying mud on their shoes. It really is difficult. Hermans is climbing better than we might have thought. In fact, at this moment, he seems to be out-climbing Alan Piper there, number 34. That Hermans is in good form, and it looks as though he is that. He's my man for today.
Certainly is, as we're looking at Lauritsen now on the very last part of the Mur de Grammont as they go round beside there's a church on the left there now. Lauritsen still in, Van Hooydonk in second place, and the riders now really in difficulty, and it'll be very interesting to see now when the bunch, now that fixed camera on the climb of the Mur de Grammont, when the bunch come up there to see who are leading the bunch through. And we should be, I reckon the producer will cut back now to the fixed camera any moment now. As we're looking, and here we are. Back in the main field, and Kelly there in about 5th or 6th place there, we can see him. Looks like Lammert's at the front of the group.
They brought it down by 10 seconds. We believe unofficially they've reduced it to 10 seconds. So that, as you rather forecasted there, that's unofficial time. It was 65 seconds. We believe it's now 55 seconds.
The group not splitting up as much as I'd like to have seen it split up. I would have preferred to see 2 or 3 riders going over the front together, and even a rider such as Eddie in the Wills, I saw him fairly well at the front of the bunch, and it looks like a couple of riders obviously getting involved in something, possibly Charlie Motte there, the RMO rider, and that looks very much like Van der Poel taking to walking up.
Yes, it is. Adrie van der Poel, a former winner, number 54, and 2-1-2 just going through the traffic there is the man who led for so long, Marco Lietti.
And that looks very much like Stephen Roach also in that group there, at the back of the group now, having a bit of trouble at the back of the...
Doesn't matter, it's a good ride if he's up that far today.
If it is, he'll be very happy to be up there. But I think it certainly looked like him. We didn't get enough chance to see see him close up or see his number, but it certainly did look like Stephen. It's the time where the race was won and lost last year also. We had 3 riders, Blankert, Anderson and Van der Poel going over the top together. Van der Poel just eased up a little bit, thinking that the group behind were catching him, and the other 2 riders went away and stayed away. And on the Bosberg, it's Edvig van Hooydonk of the Super Convex team attacking and drawing clear, looking very strong and looking like he's taking the race to the others. Dag Larsen not able to hold on to him. Van Hooydonk now, after that initial attack, has eased a little bit, just as the effort is telling on his. He's just approaching the top of the Bosberg now with only about 13 kilometres of racing left, and it'll be very interesting to see can he stay away.
The Bosberg was a key area last year between Plankert and Anderson, and could very well be again today. It's 22-year-old Van Hooydonk, Edvig van Hooydonk from Belgium. Is it going to be yet another Belgian victory in this Belgian race?
Trying to get an indication now back to the chasing group, and there they are. They're not too far behind, so the whole thing's all coming together, and anything can happen yet.
Edvig van Hooydonk is the leader in Tour de Flanders. They're in the closing kilometres now. It's either flat or downhill from here. 13k to go, and Van Hooydonk.
These riders not now a very concerted chase here. They really probably don't have the legs to do the chasing now. But Van Hooydonk still clear.
When he was working with the 7 there, his attacks looked to have more purpose, and not just with the benefit of hindsight are we saying that, but when he came to the Bosberg, Pat, he made the decisive move, and he obviously felt strong enough. It's only 18 seconds, but this man is going well.
This is where this race has been won before. We remember 2 years ago, Cricillion getting away somewhere along the same stretch and continuing to go on to win. Looking back now, the gap actually, I think, is even increasing a little bit. It's probably a bit more than 20 seconds at the moment, and it's quite possible that this group could even be caught by the chasers now.
These boys in the saddle in excess of 7 hours, 20 minutes or thereabouts. It's a long day at work.
So really a lot of action now behind, and the group starting to jump around, and riders attacking from the chasing group now to try and get up to the leader. They can see on some of these straights, they can see the leader, so they're trying their best now to make their way up to him. And this is really probably the only way they're going to catch Van Hooydonk, if they can attack, and one rider will go clear, and it's really by that. Edvig van Hooydonk now in the last 1.5 miles of the race, or 2 miles of the race, 4 kilometres to go, just 2.5 miles, and for Van Hooydonk, and Herman's really chasing very hard at the moment.
Here's head down. Concentration now for Edvig van Hooydonk. It's 20 seconds between him and Matthew Herman.
And coming up to tell him his lead is Eddie Merckx, the famous Eddie Merckx, probably the greatest cyclist ever, coming up and telling Van Hooydonk that he's just got a lead of 20 seconds, and Merckx would certainly love to see Van Hooydonk win in this race.
Just ahead of him is Hermans, Matthew Hermans, the Dutchman, the white helmet.
Sargent and Sorensen.
Sorensen, the Dane.
Mark Sargent trying to give it everything, and riders really, at this point in time, having been on the bikes now for 7 hours and 5 minutes, they really are feeling tired, and it takes a rider with exceptional strength to be able to hold out. But one man who has the willpower and who has the strength to hold out at this point in time is Van Hooydonk, because he knows he's just got to get down to the town, swing right and up into the final kilometre. As he's doing now, is Van Hooydonk out of the saddle. He's obviously looked behind and seen the chasers, but he knows he's into the last kilometre now, and he really is giving it everything, and he swings right now to the end of this straight and up into the finishing straight.
He wasn't named among the favourites this morning when they were talking about likely winners, but they'll certainly be talking about him from now on. Not many men in their career get the opportunity to win a classic, to go into the record books along with the legends of the game, the Coppys and the Bobes and the Mertzes. But for this young man today, Edvig van Hooydonk. It's a special day to remember in the town of Ninove, in Belgium, in Flanders, Flemish-speaking Belgium. And Edvig van Hooydonk, a Fleming himself, has a look over his shoulder. On goes the hat, up go the arms. That's your classic winner of the Tour of Flanders of 1989. Edvig van Hooydonk is the winner from the Super Concept Yoko team. It'll be a battle for second place then between Sargent, I should imagine, and Rolf Sorensen. But they've been joined up there, and Hermans should be the speed man here if he can get himself up to do it.
Very close now, and Sargent looks like possibly Friesons, I think, just taking the third place.
Took it. Herman Friesons was next. And he beat the handlebars, not in frustration, but in delight, because for Friesen, Herman Friesen from the Histor Sigma team, that's a great boost for that new livery team of theirs this year.
140 kilometres gone, one man away in his own. You see there he has a lead of 21 seconds. That's number 163, Jean-Claude Colotti, the 27-year-old Frenchman riding with the RMO team. Still early days, Pat, but Colotti away on his own now at this stage.
Yes, well, we're just into the first of the pavé sections. We've got 22 sections of pavé in total in the race. Totaling, we're just looking at Kelly there going through. But Colotti getting away before the first pavé section, and a lot of fighting and pushing and shoving in the bunch to get onto this first section of pavé. And riders are now starting it, and as I say, they have 22 sections in total before they reach the finish in Roubaix.
That's over 50 kilometres in total. We see there Colotti going at a nice pace there out on his own. And the motorbike shot gives an idea of the type of difficulty they face. There's Stephen Roach, in fact.
Yeah, Roach actually in a chasing group now. He's been held up by a crash on one of the pavé sections, and he's in a small chasing group now trying to get back to the main field.
And Stephen, of course, had that marvellous win finishing on Friday in the Tour of the Basque Country. So I think today he won't be too concerned with winning or losing.
No, it's really the next Sunday, the Liège-Bastogne-Liège he's preparing for now. We're looking at Sean Yates now attacking from the group and hoping to make his way up to the leader, Colotti.
Yates, of course, a teammate of Stephen Roach's last year when he rode with Fagor. He had one stage win in the Tour de France last year in the time trial. It certainly did his reputation no harm. And he's
inside the final kilometre now, and when they get onto the track, they've only 1.5 laps to go. And it would seem to me that Wampers is in pole position. He's kept the Wolf at the front. He's not prepared to do the chasing for the Wolf, and really he's in a position of strength at this point in time.
And the Wolf has been working so hard all day. He's spent a lot of energy already, Pat.
He has indeed, yeah, but having said that, he's started as one of the favourites, very strong, very good form, and he could pull it off yet.
Into the stadium, 1.5 laps to go. It's the Wolf in front in yellow. Wampers looks quite happy to stay on his wheel. Just a few hundred metres to go. A little cat and mouse game now before we see any significant move. Certainly it's going to be a Belgian winner. There was another last year, Dirk de Mol. So who do you fancy at this point, Pat?
Very difficult, really. Wampers is the man in the best position because he's come from behind. But if the Wolf now comes around into this back straight and leads it out and takes the initiative, then he could hold him off. But Wampers now in the position now, out of the saddle. The Wolf looking over his shoulder, looking ready for him now. The Wolf looking over to the left. At this point, the Wolf should jump. But it's Wampers who takes up the initiative. When Wampers goes around the Wolf reacts slowly, and Wampers still clear.
Jean-Marie Wampers, a man who wasn't originally in the Panasonic team, only came in as a late replacement last week. And it looks like he's got it. He pulled away just at the right time with a couple of 100 metres to go. Wampers coming down. A marvellous win for him. It was his birthday last Friday, and Wampers wins it. Jean-Marie Wampers with the Panasonic team. He's delighted with himself. This really puts him back on the world cycling map. The Wolf is second, and now a battle for third place. 4 men involved.
Yeah, we've got Van Hooydonk there coming in second place there. Van Hooydonk, Duclos Lassalle also there. Plankard, a little bit adrift now. Plankard really would be the best sprinter in this group. Van Hooydonk leading out Duclos Lassalle. Plankard coming behind. Van Hooydonk keeping Duclos Lassalle high up in the banking. An excellent sprint here now coming up for third place. Who's it going to be? Van Hooydonk just, I think, holds off Duclos Lassalle for fourth. Eddie Plankard fifth.
There we see the presentation to Wampers, a significant cobblestone representing the day, the 1989 Paris-Roubaix winner. Now, 5 minutes later, we see the rest coming in. Sean Kelly is on the outside here in this sprint finish. Kelly, who might be a little disappointed, but he comes across there in the white jersey. 15th place overall for Sean Kelly. One of the first men to make a big impression was Joey McLaughlin from Liverpool, a man who'd be well known to Irish cycling fans from the Nissan Classic. He stayed in front for quite a while. Conditions quite awful, Pat.
Yes, conditions of this race were very bad, and as we can see, McLaughlin were away now with one of the lot of riders. That was the climb that they went up, the gradient of a climb. The Murderhoy, they went up 3 times on the race. The race finished actually up on the top of the hill, and we can see now on the climb there, we can see McLaughlin and his compatriot away now, and this is the group behind now, and Kelly's in that group. But
Stephen Rooks led the chase here at this point. And there we see the Murderhoy, really a tough climb. Look them all out of the saddle, working very hard. And McLaughlin first over the hill, as we see. But we're looking for Sean Kelly at this point, and he'll be back in the main bunch.
he didn't have a good day, and actually quit the race with about 30 kilometres to go. He didn't go up the last climb, and the press speculation continued in Europe, as it did even in Ireland, on Kelly's position with the PDM team. But
we're coming over the hill now. On the left in the white jersey, Stephen Rooks, the teammate of Sean Kelly's, and in the yellow and orange, the Belgian Claude Coquillon, the 2 men who were later to play such a dominant part in the race.
Yes, Rooks coming back to form actually has just won the Tour de Vaucluse, and we're looking now at Martin Early. We can see just slipping through there, Martin Early out of the saddle, also riding well, having just won 2 stages in the Tour de Vaucluse during the week.
And Sean Kelly, do we see Sean Kelly at this point?
Yeah, this is Kelly,
the white, the centre of the shot. And he's still in it at this stage, but obviously disappointed for him. Do you think it bothered him that he didn't finish this race?
No, I think from my point of view, trying to evaluate his positions, we're looking at shots here of the attacks at the front of the group now, and Tunis there, another rider coming back to form now of the PDM team as well, another of the top men in the PDM team. But Kelly has had gastroenteritis twice during March, and I think he really hasn't recovered from it, and that is enough to knock any person out for 6 really, and for an athlete at this level, it has an effect. So I think it's just going to be a question of time till he gets his strength back.
Well, there we see Tunis, a teammate of Sean Kelly's, and of course it probably signifies just how strong PDM are, that they can afford to have Sean Kelly pull out and still be so strong at the front of the race. Pedro Delgado there, in fact. That's
yes,
Delgado in blue.
Another rider who has come now, who's been in Spain now recently, and didn't ride Paris-Roubaix last week, and now coming up for the Walloon Classics. And these races are running more normal roads to what we're familiar with in Paris-Roubaix. So for a rider, Spanish riders and so forth, we're looking at Le Mans now. Another rider trying to make his way back into the top echelon. But on normal roads here in this classic, as indeed in Liège-Bastogne-Liège, the riders such as Delgado and so forth can take part.
Here we see Roston and Pensac, who took the lead for a while. They pushed it at the front. You see they had a lead of 10 seconds on the chaser and 20 seconds on the main bunch. So they led for quite a while, but one of them came to grief on a corner. Roston not taking it too well. We should see shots of it in a while. Coquillon and Rooks, of course, at the moment, still leading the chase. See coming around the corner, there's Roston falling, and the others really catching up. Pensac now is going to be gobbled up by that group there. And now up at front, we see Coquillon on the right, Rooks on the left.
On one of the climbs now, and Rooks just putting the pressure on now, out of the saddle, putting the pressure on that a little bit harder and trying to draw it clear. Coquillon now reacting to him. Coquillon from this area, from this region, and this would be one of the high points of his season, this race on Liège-Bastogne-Liège. So a Walloon taking part now in the classics in the Walloon area, and it's very important, very critical for him.
And we see the two of them have got away on their own. Rooks in white on the left, Coquillon on the right. The locals, of course, will all be cheering Coquillon home. They make their way up the climb. Coquillon with home advantage. You can see how passionate the supporters are there for Claude Coquillon. And psychologically, that's always a big advantage, of course, when you're going well.
It certainly is. I mean, Coquillon is prepared for this race. He knows every one of those supporters are out cheering him as he draws clear of Rooks on the final climb up the wall of Hoy. Looking back to see his Rooks close, but Coquillon will be absolutely delighted with himself at this stage.
Absolutely. It must be very intimidating for Stephen Rooks as Coquillon begins to pull away. Driving it now out of the saddle, up this final climb, looking back. He knows now he's got it as he comes around towards the finishing straight. The local man, Claude Quillion. A big bright smile, a punch of the air. Quillion coming up, the winner of Flèche Wallonne.
Still a very good rider, of course. If you want to have class, you always have class. Occasionally disappoints, but he's had another good start to another season, Pat.
Yes, a very good Milan-San Remo. Had a very unfortunate Paris-Roubaix where he had 2 crashes and several punctures and didn't finish Paris-Roubaix, but he's currently lying very well up on the world points rankings. And as we're looking now at a shot of one rider attacking in a blue jersey, looks to be Pedro Delgado now on the attack.
1988 Tour de France winner doing the jump there just at the summit, and the chase it goes on, and Kelly has responded there to the attack from Pedro Delgado. Kelly is one of those who has responded.
This is the first classic Delgado has ridden this year. Being a Spanish rider, they don't really like the cobbles and the pave and so forth, and as a result they don't tend to ride many of the spring classics. But these 2 races, the Flèche Wallonne and the Liège-Bastogne-Liège, run on normal good roads, and Delgado, in excellent form really for this time of the year, has come up here and is showing very well in the race at this point.
It's interesting that he's a big name, because 2 of the classics in this spring have been won by relatively unknown riders, Pat.
Looking now at Kelly, now number 14, that's Kelly of the PDM team, and one rider looks like a Toshiba rider in front of him there, Filippo. Yes, Filippo of the Toshiba team with Sean Kelly, and Kelly now really driving on it. You can see the speed that they're travelling along now as they're closing up on Delgado.
It should be said about Sean Kelly that he's been written off in some quarters because of what they call relatively disappointing performances, but don't forget he was in the first 20 of Tour of Flanders, and there were 173 starters in that, and that was just at the end of a couple of bouts of food poisoning. So really he's a victim of the standard he set for himself over recent years.
It's quite true, yeah, and he has a very, very high standard. He is the world's number 1, and people do tend to look, if they see any slightest dent in the armour, they're prepared to jump on him, but it's not true. He still is the world's number 1, no matter what way you look at it.
Yellow and blue there, 121 is Phil Anderson. Behind Phil on his CV are some great performances in Liège, Bastogne-Liège. Indeed, when Kelly last won it, if I'm not mistaken, Phil Anderson was second.
A long, narrow climb that gets quite steep up towards the end, and it's the one where there's always a huge crowds, and there's usually trouble with motorbikes. We're looking at the chasers now, Van Lanker there, the chasing group, confirmation of Dainens,
Bruno Corneli, Gianetti. Now, interesting here that Delgado last year, as we look at Kelly and Anderson and Philippou and Delgado in the picture, that this is perhaps the warning shot being sent out here by Delgado for his 89 season. Could this be the build-up towards the Tour de France retention of Crown, Pat?
It could be, because as we said earlier, he doesn't normally show this kind of form at this time of the year, so the fact that he is on good form now means he could be working from a very strong base, and hopefully for him anyway will be a lot stronger come the Tour de France.
One of the great veterans here of the peloton, Phil Anderson, Australian, although I do believe he was born in London, but certainly comes out of Australia. 2 of the great veterans, as I say, Phil Anderson, Sean Kelly, and Delgado, a young veteran, and Philippou, one of the newer guys, so to speak. Philippou from the Toshiba team, Kelly now PDM, Pedro Delgado Reynolds, which is the aluminium foil, Spanish-based team, and the blue and yellow colours of Phil Anderson. On La Redoute.
Back now with the main chasers. On the first sight we see a Roach now on the right in the white crash helmet. Roach on the right of the screen, Clocker Killian in the centre, and it looks to be Robert Miller in the blue jersey of the Z team. Miller, another rider who has changed teams this year, and obviously quite comfortable and quite happy now on the climb of La Redoute. So we'll sit down and work together, and we'll draw him back gradually. But Delgado, if he's feeling that strong and he could hold out, which he could do to the finish, he will certainly upset the odds. Although there again, he's a class rider, Tour de France winner last year. It would be certainly within his grasp to win Liège-Bastogne-Liège. But at this point in time, it's not looking good for Kelly. He needs to get his act together and start chasing.
Half a minute or thereabouts to the chasing group behind. Kelly wants Philippou to come up and do his bit. The grimace on the face of the Carrick man may tell its story, and Philippou has done just that, come up to do his bit. And the chase is on to try and haul back Pedro Delgado. It looks now, although the gap is only half a minute, to be between the 4 of them. What Anderson got left, he seems to be quite willing to do his bit as well. So they've probably sussed it all out now, Pat, and it's every man to do his bit and bit, but every man to be in at the finish. And I suppose if it does come down to the sprint of the finish, the man in your picture has got to be the favourite, Sean Kelly.
position this evening and finish in second or third place, it would be a big failure for him, and there would be questions asked of the team.
Strength of character is important as anything else at this stage. And Kelly has proved in the past he's got plenty of that, just indeed as Stephen Roach. Burst of speed on the descent by Kelly, Anderson and Philippou, and they are just about to hold back Pedro Delgado. That was a great piece of work by the trio behind, but you've got to compliment and commend Delgado as well, because here's a man not noted for the classics, and that's for sure. Indeed, doesn't often ride them, but he's done a splendid job today, but they're all together again.
Suddenly they looked back and saw Roach and company just behind them. Delgado realised it, went to the front, and he's really stringing the 4 leaders out now and going up very hard. And I would say that certainly Kelly and Anderson are certainly suffering at the moment on the wheel of Delgado on the climb.
One more time, the uneven year looks to be working for Stephen Roach, because despite he may have missed some winter training, but goodness me, he's shown some form already this season.
Certainly has, but 10 seconds still is the gap between the 4 leaders and the chasers, and there's still 10-12 mile of racing left as Fignon now, looks to be Fignon trying to cross the gap.
Several men, a bit disjointed at times, but several have tried, and they all know they're in with the shout here. Roach and Coquillon together, not for the first time in Liège-Bastogne-Liège. That's the new Histor Sigma team. Used to be led by Henny Kuiper, just down at the bottom right of your picture.
Still they chase, and still riders in a very disjointed fashion really now, over the top of the climb now, trying to chase. And really, we're in the same situation probably as we were in the Col de la Redoute, where if the 4 leaders can get their act together over the top and work well together, then it's quite possible they could draw away again. Pensek there now trying to get the chase organised. Roach now still up the front of the group. Coquillon still up there. Ralph Goetz of the Super Complex team, winner of the Nissan last year, also there, and Stephen Rooks of the PDM team also.
Zed Peugeot man there is Cornelli, 105, Bruno Cornelli.
Cornelli now really bringing himself to within 150 metres, 150 metres of the 4 leaders.
And Coquillon is always ready to go, always ready to roll. There he is there, just, I have the picture to himself now. The 1984 champion of the world. See how close they are. Behind that white flag or banner there, you'll see the red kite, and that indeed is 1K to go. Kelly, Philippou, Delgado and Anderson, and there's the bunch right on their tails. Although that few seconds is just going to be enough now. Kelly, a long time out of the frame to get a big win, but back in tip-top form today. Delgado will try again on the outside, the Spanish star, the tour man. A small picture break-up of the high buildings here in Liège, but Kelly is taking up the top position now. He's got to be fair.
He has, he's in pole position, he can spring it on any of them really, and my only concern would be that they take it easy and the bunch would catch them, because it's very close. Anderson now taking up the running with Kelly on the wheel. It's a perfect lead out for Kelly now as they're going into the last 600 metres.
Phil Anderson from Australia, from Sean Kelly of Ireland. It's perfect for Kelly if Pat McQuaid stays. Kelly comes out from the wheel of Anderson, has a look at the opposition, and realises that he's back on the top step of the podium again. Sean Kelly's won Liège-Bastogne-Liège, then Philippou, Anderson, Delgado, and the bunch were that close. Tremendous racing in the Classic. Tremendous racing. Sean Kelly the winner, Philippou second, and familiar territory for Kelly, back talking to the press and media of the world. And nice to see him back too, and not forgetting that he does work for PDM, thanks to the calf, Sean. And there's the World Cup standings. Van Hooydonk, the winner of Tour de Flanders, the leader. Kelly in second place. What a day.
We're in Dairyland here. The crowd's grazing just outside the stands and the advertising hoarding. But the television cameras of Europe are about to pick up the winner of the Amstel Gold. Shortly, I should imagine, he will acclaim himself and be acclaimed by the crowd around the finish. Eric Van Langer, away with Mauro Gianetti for so long, has finally come good, and he's won at Lassie. That Langer over the line is the winner, and there'll be a bit of a battle for the runner-up position. And Bauer and Coquillon, one more time, are in confrontation, but this time Bauer is determined. Is he as good as Coquillon? The two of them are shoulder to shoulder again. Verhoeven coming on the right of your picture. Verhoeven very near Coquillon. Coquillon goes, Coquillon takes. Bauer is third, Verhoeven is next, and Gianetti is next. Oh, there were shades of runs there, Pat.
There certainly were shades of runs, but I noticed they gave themselves plenty of room. And I noticed as Killian just took that sprint there for second place, Barrow looked over at him, and I think there was a smile came across his face. I think they both realised what it was a bit of history being replayed there.
The shots there were of Killian, but the shots, and rightly so, are of the Amstel Gold winner, the 24th edition of the race, Eric Van Lanker. So much television time devoted to the chase, the counter chases, the breaks, the jumps, the tactics, and not as much perhaps as Van Lanker deserves. But a classic winner once is always a classic winner, never to be erased from the record book. Charles Killian gives his version of things as we look for the rest of the finishes. Remember, 5 riders have finished the race. But whether we're going to see the rest of them over the line, I have my doubts. The race has been running late today, and the winner is Eric Van Lanker, Claude Killian, Steve Bauer, Nico Verhoeven, and here indeed comes the bunch. Kelly, these should be along in that.
Kelly on the left of the screen there now, just in about 5th place in the group there now, sprinting for 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, about probably finished about 10th or 12th in the race, Kelly, overall.
Per Pedersen was the man who was 6th.
Gianni Bugno is on their side. He's a very good 28-year-old. And Tony Romingo, the Swiss, who is 3rd overall on general classification, number 172. Volpi's there as well. Alessandro Pozzi, Pedana, and Corti. So some very good riders in the Chateau Dax team. Pozzi, the most experienced, at 34 years old. Romingo, the one who is best placed on GC. Still awaiting a good time to aim at here. Chateau Dax had a very good performances individually in the Tour de France last year, and a couple of good shows early on in the Spring Classics in Belgium and Holland this year. So here's a team with a limited supply of money, but have obviously done themselves a great deal of good. This looks like the System U team finishing with Laurent Fignon therein. System U, of course, a French-based team. They're coming through there, but the time is away outside the 37.5-minute mark. Chateau Dax and Fagor, of course, still on the road. This is the Chateau Dax team. See the disc wheels. Roach, the Fagor team. And their time, as you can see, is in excess of 38 minutes. 38 minutes, 11 seconds, which places them in 10th position. 10th position for Fagor. For that time, while it's not good on the team, it won't unduly worry Stephen Roach, because he will not as yet have lost any real time to possible contenders for the championship itself. Alpha Lum, a little depleted. I think they've lost about 4 riders there. And that's the USSR team. So prominent for so many years now in amateur cycling, both in stage races and, of course, in the Olympic Games. And there was always the question mark, how would they perform among the professionals? To receive the pink jersey of race leader Giro d'Italia 1989 after stage 3. The calculations would suggest that Silvano Contini, indeed here he is, Silvano Contini, the 31-year-old from the Malvor CD team. That team was second in the team time trial. He had 2 wins last year, but this is an important pink jersey for him this year. He is the new leader of the Tour of Italy. Silvano Contini from the Malvor CD team, an Italian leading in Italy. He's the individual leader then, so in the team time trial, and presently a check on what happened on the team time trial today. A win, as you can see, in 37 minutes for Arias Stea. Stage 3 is over in the Giro. And a 31-year-old Italian called Silvano Contini is the man in pink, the race leader. This is the longest stage of the 1989 Tour, from Cosenza to Potenza, 275 kilometers. And the peloton not exactly killing themselves either, because it's going to be quite a slow time. Pretty well all together there, but somebody has been up the road for a long time. In fact, at one stage, this man, Stefano Giuliani, was 6 minutes and 40 seconds ahead. But to go, he was looking very good indeed. And although that 6:40 had been drastically reduced inside the last few kilometers now, he is still looking good and still has in excess of a minute on the peloton. Stefano Giuliani, now 30 years old, riding for the small and little-known Fiede team. They only have a small squad from which to choose, no huge money in it, but a stage win here today would do them a world of good into Potenza. But behind this great movement in the peloton itself, Fondriest, Maurizio Fondriest, the world champion. Remember, he won in Belgium last year in that controversial finish when Bauer and Coquelin got mixed up, and he took advantage of it. He is there in the vanguard today. Sorensen and Acacio da Silva. Disaster now can deprive, and inside the last kilometre, that won't happen anyway, can deprive Giuliani his stage win. But behind him there's going to be quite a battle going on as the peloton gets the move on. Phil Anderson we saw prominent there a moment ago, and Rolf Sorensen as well. But those two are just slightly ahead of the main bunch. But up front, it's less than a minute now for the leader Giuliani, but less than a minute is quite good enough to win this stage into Potenza, and here he is. And when he makes the line, he's 30 years old now, remember. His best performance up to this in recent times was third in the Italian Championship 2 years ago. But now at 30 years of age, this will only be the second victory of his entire professional career, which stretches back to 1980-81. So a memorable day then for Stefano Giuliani. Behind him, Phil Anderson, Maurizio Fondriest, Rolf Sorensen, Acacio da Silva, Contini himself. But shortly, he will get the acclaim of the crowd, and no doubt he'll wallow in it all. And there he is, Stefano Giuliani, the 30-year-old Italian, taking the stage, the second win of his professional career. It moves him well up on GC, but it won't have him in the lead. Contini, remember, is the man in the pink jersey, but the bunch should come round the corner pretty well together. Acacio da Silva is the man nearest to Contini on general classification. Phil Anderson in the blue and the yellow helmet. It's Fondriest is second, it's Anderson is third, Sorensen is fourth, da Silva is fifth. Fondriest finished at 44 seconds, the rest of them in the same time. So by my reckoning, there'll be no change on GC at the end of the fifth stage, the longest stage of the 1989 race. But
seventh place overall going into today's stage. The leader in the pink jersey, Acacio da Silva of Portugal. There we see Stephen Roach, and he's had a very good start, Pat McQuaid, to this 1989 Giro.
Yes, it's gone very well from up to now. He keeps saying that he's got problems, he's still coming back from last year and so forth, but this is probably going to be the first test for Stephen and his form. It's the first time trial of the Tour of Italy, and really it depends on how he gets on today as to what his real chances are in this year's Tour.
In seventh place overall, the man he'll be watching today, of course, is the man in second place, Eric Breukink, the Panasonic rider from Holland. Breukink hasn't been beaten in an individual time trial this year. He's in great form, and obviously Stephen will have to watch him in particular. There are, of course, a few men who in the mountains may come to the fore, Luis Herrera. But at this stage, Breukink will be one of the men to watch in the time trial, obviously, Pat.
Certainly is. He's probably the best time trialist, and he's very much on form. He always does ride a good Tour of Italy, Breukink.
White Fignon today, 49, 13, 14, pushing it now, trying to gain as much time as he can, coming up to the line. 49, 20, 15. Good performance by Fignon, but again, he'll finish behind both Piasecki and Stephen.
Just to wear the race leader's jersey in any of the great tours, in actual fact.
But Piasecki, of course, will be today's stage winner. Da Silva will not have the pink jersey after tonight's stage. Still a good performance by Acacio da Silva. But that's the man who won the stage today, Lech Piasecki of Poland, riding for the Malvor CD team. Super ride, his time 48 minutes 26 seconds. In third place, Stephen Roach of Ireland. He'll be pleased with that, 33 seconds down. Sorensen of Denmark, fourth. Skibby, same time. So Stephen Roach now has moved considerably up in the general classification. He'll be quite pleased with today's performance. Still a long way to go, of course, in the Giro. Remember, it doesn't finish until Sunday of the Netherlands. Laurent Fignon in third place, a minute and 1 second down. Into stage 11 from Riccione to Mantova, 244 kilometres. There at the front you see the pink jersey, the new race leader Eric Breukink coming down by the river for the last time. Just a few hundred metres to go now. Who's going to win the sprint?
Well, word coming in on race radio is that Bugno of the Aristei team is at the front of the group. Bugno, Freuler is also up there.
Baffi, another of the Italian riders.
See now one of the domestics just gone right back there now, having done a stint to the front.
Here we go, the sprint finish.
Baffi in the centre, Freuler on the right of the Panasonic team. Cipioni on the left of the blue jersey. Freuler takes it, hand up in the air. Freuler, it seemed to me possibly from Baffi. We might get a rerun of it now.
Oh, it was a pretty close thing.
Freuler, yes, in the centre of the picture now, just in front. On his left is Cipollini of Del Tongo. On his right is Baffi of the Aristei team. But Freuler taking the stage from Cipollini, Baffi third, and Rosala right on the right-hand side in the blue jersey of the Italian team in fourth place.
So, Urs Freuler of Switzerland, his second stage win this year in the Giro d'Italia. He won 4 days ago. Second, Cipollini of Italy. Baffi is third, and Rosala fourth. You see the Italians filling 4 places after Freuler. So Freuler will be pleased with his win, but overall there's no change in the general classification, and it showed just how dangerous a slip can be in a bunch sprint finish. Now this has been a fairly familiar sight in the Giro. We've had quite a few bunch sprints on the early flat stages before the mountains. Now keep an eye out for Ralph Sorensen of Denmark. He's on the left, Bruno Liali of Italy is behind him. Sorensen on the left, coming in, trying to jockey for position. There he slips, bang, into the barriers. Out he comes, Liali goes over him. Very nasty injury indeed for Sorensen. The sprint is won by Mario Cipollini of Italy, Rodriguez of Spain is second, and Jean-Paul van Poppel from Holland is third. But it was a really horrible belt off the barriers for Ralph Sorensen. Suffered a very nasty cut on his head and severe concussion. Bruno Liali is also out of the race. Liali has a broken collarbone. Now here you see Sorensen being brought into hospital. There was a lot of blood from the cut. When he felt, you can actually still see the blood on the bandage. I think he's quite lucky to have got away so lightly. It could have been far, far worse. And indeed surprising that only 2 men. Well, this is what the riders face on stage 13 from Padova to climb very keen second place overall. Eric Breukink of Holland, with Laurent Fignon of France 15 seconds further back. But this is the real test for Stephen Roach. The climb is quite horrendous, Pat.
Yes, the final climb really is 12 or 15 kilometres or so long. It goes up in about 3 stages, and it's very, very steep. But not just that, the whole stage is very difficult, and they've been already, as we see them now, they've been over about 4 climbs already, and this now is at the foothills of the start of the final climb with about 15 kilometres of racing to go. Colombians at the front, as we expected, and speaking with Stephen overnight, he expected that the Colombians were really going to launch an attack today, and Herrera is the man. But at the front of the group, it's Sierra and Cardenas of the Cafe de Colombia team, stringing the group out, and the bunch now in one long line, and all the strong men. Now we can see that aerial shot there of the group starting to split up.
Well, the Colombians indeed very prominent at the front. There's the pink jersey of Eric Breukink. There we see Cardenas. And number 41 in front is Sierra, yet another of the Colombians. Effortlessly going up the hill. Well, the Colombians, of course, always dominate these high mountain climbs. Herrera has plenty of support, which will please him. 2 of his teammates there, Sierra and Cardenas. Well, Stephen Roach still with the bunch, and he'll be happy, I'd imagine, to stay with Fignon and Breukink and just not lose any time.
Yes, well, that's his intention going into today's stage. He does fear this climb a bit because he hasn't really climbed at this level for the past couple of years, and we're seeing good shots of Breukink there now. Looking very strong and very comfortable and very relaxed. Claude Criquillion on his left, and a green jersey just on the other side of the screen is Lazaretta We can just see Roach there, the white crash helmet of Roach there in the centre of the screen.
There, yes. And Andy Hampston, last year's Giro winner, is just to the right in the green and red sleeves. So all the leaders are up in this bunch. But the final climb, of course, will decide it. Laurent Fignon in the black, yellow and red, just behind Eric Breukink. And here we see Herrera beginning to make a move. He's out of the saddle, and whereas we saw Stephen with grimacing, Herrera seems to be having few problems in opening a little gap now, Pat.
Yes, Herrera's on the attack, and this is what's expected. Whether the riders try to respond to this attack or whether they let him go, we'll just wait and see. But the Colombians this is the way they would ride this climb. They'll attack fast, slow, little efforts like that, whereas the riders like Roach and Breukink and Fignon would prefer to ride up at a much steadier pace.
Well, this shot just shows that the gap is indeed opening up. Herrera there, back to the turn, he's opened it up to maybe 30 metres. Breukink, in fact, the pink jersey, is leading the chase as they come around. There's still maybe 30 in the main bunch there. Luis Herrera in the lead.
Well, this is really their forte, the Colombians. Herrera comes from Bogota, has been brought up and lives at 6,000, 7,000 feet, which is the height of this climb today. So really altitude and that sort of thing don't pose any problem for him. They're lightly built riders, the Colombians, small in stature, and again that is a big advantage on the climbs.
Now here we see that they're reaching a fairly flat stage. As you say, Pat, there are a couple of different climbs with a short rest in between for them, but Herrera seems to be opening out quite a significant lead now. You can see conditions quite awful, really, and they will get a lot worse, of course, as the riders go higher into the mountains.
Yes, certainly, as they're rising up on a day such as today there, we can see the rain coming down fairly heavily. That could very possibly be snow, and the organisers were a bit afraid at the start of the day stage that there could be a lot of snow at the top of the climb and could even force them to abandon the stage finish. But weather reports indicate that it's raining at the top of the mountain and not as yet snowing.
Well, there we see the bunch. Breukink in the pink jersey, Stephen Roach very comfortably there, just behind Andy Hampston. Laurent Fignon also there, so no change there. But significantly, Luis Herrera is getting away. Now Herrera will not do well in the time trials, certainly not the flat time trials. He'll drop a couple of minutes there, so he'll have to gain as much time as he can in these mountain stages.
Yes, that's true. If Herrera wants to win this Tour of Italy, he's got to gain as much as possible in the mountains, because on the final, for instance, the final flat time trial of 53 kilometres in Florence, Herrera is going to lose a lot of time, so particularly to a rider such as Breukink. So if Herrera does have real ambitions on winning this Tour of Italy, he's got to put as much time as possible between himself and Breukink on the mountain stages.
7 kilometres to go, and Luis Herrera stretching his lead. Being encouraged there. 40 seconds now the lead, quite significant. It's unlikely he's going to be caught at this stage now with that lead, 40 seconds indeed. I'm sure he'll be hoping to maybe stretch that, because a few minutes down, and he knows that later on, when they leave the mountains, he's unlikely to make any significant ground on the leaders.
We see him now changing up onto his big chain ring there, which indicates that he's onto the second plateau, really, and we've another plateau of maybe a kilometre or two before they start the final 5 kilometres up to the finish itself. You can see a bit of activity in the group behind now, trying to stretch it out a bit. Fignon there in second place. Bike with Herrera, out of the saddle, keeping the momentum going, keeping that bike going up the hill.
Well, one gets the impression that Fignon, Breukink, Roach are happy to let Herrera go, but they're just watching each other back there.
Well, they're not really that happy to let him go, but they don't want to try and ride up the hill at his pace, because what will happen is then they get so far up and then they'll just blow. And so they're better off to ride up the mountain, and this is really the experience of riders such as Roach and Fignon, that they will let a rider like Herrera go and then try and just limit their losses and ride up at their pace, really, as best they can. Good shot there now. We saw Herrera going into that corner, changing down onto a small chain ring and a small gear, and out of the saddle. This climb now starting to get very, very steep over the last 3 or 4 kilometres.
And significantly, he has stretched his lead. Herrera stretched it by 20 seconds in the last kilometre. He's now a full minute ahead. Here we see the bunch, and it's down to what? It's down to 2-4, about 11 riders there. Breukink in pink, he's second. Fignon inside him in the yellow and black stripes. And Stephen Roach further back, at the back of the picture there beside Andy Hampston. And Broiking now is pushing the pace. A lot of people, Pat, have been wondering about his strength, Broiking's strength, but he looks here as though he's very strong and quite happy to keep pushing it.
He certainly looks strong in the mountains, and this is where he probably would have been a little bit suspect, if suspect at all, because certainly in the time trials he's not going to lose the Tour of Italy, and if he's going to lose it anywhere, it would be in the mountains. And we have seen him in past Tours of Italy crack in situations like this. But he certainly looks strong, and it looks like it could very much be Broiking's Tour of Italy this year.
Still a long way to go, of course, as Luis Herrera.
We got a shot there of the gears, and a lot of the riders, when people would be into gears that riders were putting on for this climb, were a 36 chain ring and a 25 and even a 26 sprocket at the back. I mean, there's no mountains or no climbs on Ireland that will warrant a gear as low as that. And so that gives you some indication, and we can see the camera doesn't really tell the gradient, it doesn't show the gradient all that well, but that climb is very, very steep.
And Broiking pushing it. He's maybe 10, 12 metres ahead of Fignon.
Looking back now to see what reactions come from behind, and that group getting smaller still. Now down to 6, 7 riders now in the chasing group, and Roach still there. So really, Stephen at this stage now is still having, everything's going well for him, and he's probably suffering a lot and probably concerned over the last few kilometres, but he's certainly not losing any time to his main rivals.
Stephen, of course, will be hoping to gain time in the 2 time trials remaining. On Wednesday there's a mountain time trial, and then in Florence a fairly flat one. Broiking isn't going to get away. Fignon is keeping the pressure on Broiking, but it's significant that Broiking isn't afraid to push the pace. There's Stephen in the white and orange on the left, Andy Hampston behind him, Lajoretta, Fignon also there.
Well, we've some indication really from the riders all out of the saddle, all going slowly. That we can see now the climb as they go up. Herrera now at 1 minute clear of the chasers on his own, out of the saddle, and really struggling, really suffering, but still due to take the stage possibly.
And the snow, of course, as they get higher, you see the snow there. My goodness, it really is pretty cold for the riders now. Look at that. Packed snow on the sides. The roads obviously have been cleared, but the mist, that will be cold, icy mist and rain on the riders. Really miserable stage for them.
Oh, it is, and it reminds you of a stage similar to this last year when Andy Hampston actually won the Giro d'Italia basically on a stage similar in very, very rough conditions when a lot of the riders, about 20 riders, abandoned on the particular stage.
It was on the Gavia, a blizzard, and it was extraordinary. They were a bit worried about that again, and Herrera won't be too worried now, though. He's going clear. He'll only have a couple of kilometres to go now. Luis Herrera. It really is tough stuff. Well, if you ever doubt the strength and courage and determination of these people, pictures here show just what a tough, grueling sport it is. Remember, not one rest day in the Giro d'Italia this year. This is stage 13, another 11 days to go.
Herrera now just approaching inside the last kilometre. He just got one right-hand bend, a very steep right-hand bend to make now, and then up under the finishing banner. Out of the saddle on his lowest of his 14 gears. You can see there, around that corner, very, very steep bend, and into the last couple of metres.
He's been more than 5.5 hours on the bike in these kind of conditions, climbing up this mountain. Fabulous performance by Herrera. He hasn't been very significant recently, but he's showing his mettle today. Great performance by Luis Herrera, and suddenly he's back in the reckoning in the Giro d'Italia.
The whole thing is now how much time he gains on his rivals behind, so we're waiting. The watches are on now as he goes under the banner and continues riding, actually, possibly just to try and keep himself warm or riding up to his soigneur. But Herrera gone through the finish, and the question is what has happened behind. We do know, or we have heard on race radio, that the group behind has split up.
So who's going to gain time or who's going to lose time? Fignon, Broiking and Roach had been together all the way through this stage 13. There's Laurent Fignon finishing second. Eric Broiking just a couple of seconds behind him. That's significant. Where's Stephen Roach? We're still waiting for Stephen.
1 minute gone through there. Hampson's gone through. Ciccioli goes through.
So Stephen has lost time now. That's established. Fignon finishing a minute behind Luis Herrera. Eric
Conti.
Breukink was 4 seconds further back.
Conti gone through there in 6th place. Giovanetti, the Italian, gone through there in 7th place.
And still we wait for Stephen Roach. It's important he doesn't lose any more time now. He's going to be quite a few seconds down. And here's Stephen now pushing it. Look at, he's in a very, very tired condition. Look, almost stops as he crosses the line. It's been a horrendous day for Stephen. Grueling climb. Of course, he hasn't been as high as this, Pat, for 2 years.
More riders finished now, and Roach really under stress, or under this in a lot of distress there at that finish, as are all these riders now coming through there. Every one of them, a rider now pointing, grab me, help me, get my feet out. And probably their feet, for most of these riders, their feet are probably frozen solid in the pedals.
So Stephen has lost time, that's established. I wonder, will he be able to regain? He's now going to be, what, 1.5 minutes behind Eric Breukink, who will obviously retain the pink jersey by... He was only 4 seconds behind Fignon, but Fignon will move ahead of Stephen indeed. So it'll be quite a tough battle for Stephen now for the remainder of the Giro.
Certainly will, as we're watching Zimmerman go through, Quirquillion, Eddie Sheepers there, teammate of Stephen, gone through there. But all of these riders now coming through under great stress.
The pink jersey by... He was only 4 seconds behind Fignon, but Fignon will move ahead of Stephen. Pink jersey beside him, Luis Herrera, who performed so heroically on the stage today.
Got a shot of Stephen there, and really he has lost time to his main rivals Fignon and Breukink, but all is not lost yet. There's a very hard week of racing yet, and Stephen, who has great recovery powers, I think can bounce back.
So Eric Breukink of Holland retains the overall lead.
But off he goes in the green jersey number 46 from Cruzagasuga in Colombia. The man after whom an entire broadcasting nation follows him on every tour in Europe every year. This, with number 99, is Eddie Sheepers, the 33-year-old Belgian, member of the Pegor team, 9th in the Vuelta de España last year. And now another of the Colombian team, Cafe de Colombia, it's Henri Cardenas. He's just 23, had a victory in the Tour of Americas last year. And this, Pat, is the world champion.
Yes, Maurizio Fondriest, who we remember winning our World Championship in Belgium last year. Various other things, for instance, he'll even be able to time himself on the climb, as we're looking at Breukink there, and some of Breukink's background there on the left of the screen.
Had 11 wins last year, and people said that this is the young man from Holland most likely to win a Tour one day. And maybe
for an event such as this, which is one of Stephen's specialties, and he's hoping actually to do very well, or he possibly even win this time trial today. He certainly has to get himself in the right frame of mind, and we saw there at a time like that nobody can go near him. You just let him get himself together, let us get his mind together, mind over matter, and prepare for the time trial.
Back to Maurizio Fondriest, the world champion, the 24-year-old Italian. 1988 world champion, won in Belgium. The world championships this year will take place in France. Won it in rather controversial circumstances, but let us hasten to add he had nothing to do with the accident or the pushing. He just took advantage of the situation, and why not? Because he had to get his own bike up there to be well placed. Back to Stephen Roach again, still in that deep mood of concentration and prayer. Word is that it's now raining pretty heavily at the top of the mountain, but still at the start, reasonably dry, some drops of rain all right, as Stephen prepares for this, and he'll enjoy the time trial, particularly in the mountains, Pat.
He certainly will, although this particular time trial now is going to be very treacherous in the wet, because as they climb up this mountain, the roads get very narrow. They're going through narrow towns or narrow villages on the way. Rain really bouncing on the roads. Very, very, very heavy shower they're going through at the moment.
Among his 5 wins last year was the win in the Tour of Italy. Andrew Hampston, very good rider of a very good American team. 7-Eleven really put their money where their faith was and backed this team. And we get back to Stephen Roach again, looking solid on the bike. Doesn't he always look good on the bike, whatever the conditions? And they really are bad now.
Yeah, he certainly is going to be at a disadvantage now, because we can see now as he goes around this corner, and we saw Herrera going around the corner a while ago. Roach going around it a lot slower because he's got to maintain his momentum and try and stay upright on the bike.
Lauren Fignon, the race leader in the pink jersey, the Maglia Rosa. By the way, Herrera's time, 28 minutes and 30 seconds. Even of the Soviet Union at 19 seconds was next best. Even more delighted if he can reduce the margin here on this. Look at this for weather on the Mendrisio. Lauren Fignon of France, a man who knows what it's like to win the major tours. Twice winner of the Tour de France, and if he wins this year, it'll be twice winner of the Tour of Italy. But his best years, of course, were 83, 84. Although he's won classics since then, he's desperately seeking that big Tour win again. Remember, he abandoned Tour de France last year.
Breaking here now, approaching the finish.
Eric Breukink from the Panasonic team, Dutchman, will have a time that will leave him 5th overall. 59 seconds behind Luis Herrera. His time still stands good on this mountain individual time trial stage. Stephen Roach about to post a good time today. Certainly be in the top 5. Remember, Herrera's time was 28.5 minutes. Roach is just inside a minute better than that. Well, the rain certainly seems to have eased anyway. In those shots we saw of it bouncing off the camera.
Last couple of days are some difficult mountain stages, and people like Hampston will be certainly having a go at Fignon. He's going to have a hard week.
Lauren Fignon about to lose 34 seconds to Giappone. A minute and 10 to Hampston, 52 seconds to Roach, 34 seconds to Zimmerman as we look at the stage result. Luis Herrera being interviewed in the top right-hand corner, but the pink jersey remains with Lauren Fignon of France. He's the overall leader. Another Maglia Rosa for Lauren Fignon in the Giro d'Italia.
So Roach improving his position by 1 place to 6th.
Hampston and Fignon are among this group here at the top of the mountain. It was going to be a difficult last few days all the time for Fignon, because in the individual mountain time trial, as we look at Yeso Blanco of Spain in the picture here, it was always going to be a difficult last couple of days for Fignon. On the mountain individual time trial, he lost time to Giappone. He lost over a minute to Andy Hampston, last year's winner, 52 seconds to Stephen Roach, and 34 seconds to Zimmerman. So it was always 5-6 years ago.
Well, certainly he's proving on form this year, as we see Claude Coquillon from the Hitachi team in Belgium making a break. Coquillon well down the field. He's done well in the one-days this year, and he's trying now to open it out.
He's a man who's had a very good season this year, and a man who still hasn't quite forgiven those responsible, Steve Barr in particular, for denying him the World Championship last year, 1988. Very good quality rider, world champion, of course, 1984, and a great stylist. Relatively unknown until he won that world title in Barcelona in 1984, but since then he's truly established himself. So there's a good quality man here in this bunch. We just see the pink jersey coming right hand side of the road, a brief glimpse there, but taking it up here from Hitachi, as you say, Des, is Claude Coquillon.
But he still hasn't stretched out too far from the field. We see Laurent Fignon is leading the chase indeed. There's Fignon wearing 201 and the pink jersey. He's already been a winner in Italy this year. He won Milan-San Remo, the first of the classics. And he's not hiding in the bunch. He's leading it out. There's Giappone, who is in 2nd place overall, and he's sticking closely to Fignon. Of course, Giappone really would want to gain some time today on Fignon, but Fignon looking strong and leading the bunch, making sure Coquillon doesn't get away too early. Well, they've caught Coquillon now. They're making a break of 1:69. That's Tomasini, one of the Italian riders.
Italy desperately wanting, of course, to get a victory, an overall victory in the Giro, their own home tour. They rated higher than Tour de France, but that's their opinion and they're entitled to it. but they haven't had a winner last year. That was Andy Hampton. The year before that, of course, Stephen Roach. And so they're hoping that an Italian can do it this year. Giapponi's the big hope, but it looks like Fignon's form today would suggest that he's not going to give up the Maglia Rosa too easy.
With Tomasini now being chased by Peter Winnen from Holland, a teammate of Eric Breukink, the Panasonic man who led this race for so long, led for about the first 15 days indeed.
So there it is then, Tomasina and Peter Winnen in the picture. Winnen, a very good domestic for years, and has had his share of wins. There he is, the Dutchman, Peter Winnen from the Panasonic Easel Star team. 152.
I suppose the race has been a bit of a disappointment to Panasonic because Breukink looked so strong for so long.
Looked so strong for so long in Tour de France last year too, but one of these days they reckon he's going to win a big international tour.
They're being caught by the Hitachi rider Jan van Aert, another Dutchman, number 128. 3 men away then, Tomasini, Peter Winnen and Van Aert from Holland. 2 Dutchmen and Giapponi leading the chase on the 3 men who've got away. That's the world champion jersey, the rainbow jersey, the white one.
And that's Giapponi, I believe, just right behind him there in the reddish coloured jersey. But the bunch stretched out remarkably here, but remember it's quite a climb and the speed is up. This is going to be a very fast stage indeed. And it's interesting that Fignon, whose reputation suffered quite a deal in Tour de France last year in his home country, remember he's a 28-year-old Parisien, he suffered greatly when he had to abandon there, but he got over that and had a very good classic year in 1989, and here he is going for the Giro. Of course, he's a past winner of the Giro 5 years ago.
Now you can see it's a very fast descent. There's Giapponi in the orange-pink jersey, 141, keeping the pressure on. Ahead of him, 128, Van Aert. 86, the world champion, Fondriest. And also up there, Tomasini of Italy and Peter Winnen.
Feel that the trade teams lose out if a man has to wear a special jersey like the World Championship jersey. Last year, including that aforementioned Milan-San Remo. Interesting that there is not much evidence of System U support around. So Fignon has taken the initiative himself. He's covered every break, and really, as we said before, showing his quality. But this is a very good quality stage today, because there's no unknowns getting away to claim a bit of victory. All quality men, the current world champion, an ex-world champion in Coquillon, next Giro winner in Fignon, the pink jersey's there, the man who is second in GC, Giapponi, is there. So whoever wins this stage is going to be a star name.
So the field being stretched out, Phil Anderson leading at the front. There's Giapponi, 5 kilometres from the finish. And we see the pink jersey of Laurent Fignon as they approach the outskirts of La Spezia.
And the speed is up, probably doing 50 to 55 miles an hour at the moment. And this is a very good ride here by Laurent Fignon. Look at that, he's almost welded to the saddle and to the handlebars. Right up there with the front boys, five of them there.
Fignon determined now not to let them get away. Phil Anderson still leading it at the front. There's Fondriest in the striped jersey. Fignon now pushing. Giapponi is leading now from La Jarretta. Giapponi in the orange jersey, La Jarretta in green. La Jarretta moving in front now.
To just about everybody that he really is a quality man, because today he had to do it alone in defense of this pink jersey. The pundits were saying that this was the real test, and perhaps he'd collapse in this last couple of days. Well, that's his answer.
Prominent there, in the middle of them. Giapponi is there, Fondriest is there, Fignon is there. Phil Anderson also prominent.
The long shot there, Phil Anderson was just in about third position. Depends on who has the courage to sit in.
Fignon making a significant break on the inside. Stephen Roach there in the centre, swinging to the left in white and red, but Fignon pushing it now. Laurent Fignon, the overall race leader, he's coming up. Fondriest is behind him, Phil Anderson is next, but Fignon arms aloft. A marvellous stage win for Laurent Fignon, the overall race leader, his first stage win in this year's Giro. Fondriest of Italy is second in the same time. Phil Anderson is third. There's the bunch coming in. Very significant though. Stephen Roach also up there with the leaders, but Fondriest will pick up a bonus. So will Laurent Fignon, and so will Anderson in third place. There was a 10-second bonus for that sprint finish. Laurent Fignon will get that, so although they all came in together, the leaders, Fignon, in fact, will stretch his lead by 10 seconds. So Fignon leading now. Cipollini in second place, 1 minute and 26 seconds behind. Hampsten 1 minute 31 down.
Behind Fignon's group.
Refreshing water been thrown on Bugno there, and always the encouragement from some fanatical spectators, as though he was willing them on. It was much easier to spectate than participate, that's for sure.
Long, twisting, winding, narrow climb, well sheltered, so the heat which is out today doesn't really affect them that much.
So on the road here on the climb is Bugno the leader, Sanchez in second place, and back behind it's any one of Cipollini, Hampsten, Breukink, Fignon, who are in the lead. And we're back to them now, and I think that is Cipollini leading up Fignon and Lejarreta in third place in that breakaway. Breakaway from the main bunch, that is. Flavio Giapponi in the Del Tongo team, the 25-year-old.
1 minute 12 seconds now from the leader back to this chasing group that we're looking at now.
Laurent Fignon took over the lead in this Giro of 1989 on the Marmoledo Pass. Remember, in the snow and the rain, he took over the lead, and that was stage 14 when Breukink blew him. No sign of this man blowing up. He's had a good day today. Bugno, 29th in GC, so he certainly won't be a Giro winner this year. But a stage win in a major multi-tour race is always one for the CV. And he's looking good, although they are gaining the time back on him, and with the power men just behind him, chances are he will be caught, but he's looking quite comfortable. Lejarreta, I believe. Yeah, 6 of them there, but still Bugno in the lead. Meantime, although we didn't actually see it in shot, Sanchez, whom we saw briefly, has been swallowed up as well and has gone backwards. Gian and Bugno had 8 wins last year, including that Tour de France stage win to Limoges, as we said. And again, he's another one of these Italians that they hope will take over. They're desperately seeking a new champion. Just checking there with his advisors as to how the time is going. Motorbike is able to tell him, I think, Pat, that it has been whittled down considerably. I think they were within a half a minute of him now.
I think so, but he's just approaching the top of the climb now, and if he gets over it, he might gain some time on the other side. And a lot depends really on how the group behind chase, or whether they really are intent on catching him, or whether Fignon, for instance, is just happy to sit in the group and let it ride along. Now, Giapponi still at the front from Fignon, from Lejarreta. Hampsten is there also. Breukink is there as well, and then little Sanchez at the back.
So we're looking at the 6 in the main picture. The inset is Bugno, gritting his teeth and hoping to go for the stage win today, but it won't worry Laurent Fignon, nor indeed Giapponi. They're the 2 leaders. Fignon, the leader, of course, in the pink jersey on GC, and Bugno way down in 29th position, so he may have the stage win if he so desires. As regards the overall in the Giro d'Italia, well, that seems to be wrapped up between those 2 now.
See, they're now just approaching the top of the climb because the cars have left Bugno. They're gone ahead, and that means that the group behind are closing up, and the cars really need to be out of the way on the descent just in case the riders from behind close up. 30 seconds now, the gap between Bugno and the chasing group, so all traffic in between the leader and the chaser is now cleared, which will give these riders a clear run down the mountain.
When the pace will be upped considerably.
And Fignon certainly isn't under any pressure to increase the pace, and as such the average speed of the stage is down today.
24 miles an hour though for the Giro up to now overall, not just today but the overall Giro. A very good shot at Bugno, has held his form extremely well. Most of all, he's held his calm.
Giapponi just allowing Lejarreta to do all the chasing, and I think even though Giapponi's on a different team to Bugno, I think Italian nationalism comes through there, and I think Giapponi would be quite happy to let Bugno stay out there. No, he takes his turn at the front now, and then Fignon comes through.
So Fignon, Giapponi, Breukink, Conti, Lejarreta, Claude Coquillon. Giapponi's ridden so well in this tour, he's got to fancy himself to be second here. As Lejarreta still, most of the time he's been the one in the vanguard in the chase. But here's the man who's about to come in and win the stage, Gianni Bugno. It'll take something less than 6.5 hours. 6 hours, 26 minutes, and 50 seconds. And congratulations all round. And now the sprint for second place. Cuquilin looking strong. Fignon, of course. Gipponi. Andy Hampston there as well. That's Cuquilin right centre of the picture. Red and yellow colours. Fignon coming just on his outside. Cuquilin trying to hold him. Gipponi behind on the wheel of Fignon. But Cuquilin takes second place. 46 seconds behind the stage winner. Bugno. Fignon third. Gipponi fourth there. And this group includes Stephen Roach.
Yes, this group finishing a further minute behind, a minute and a half behind, so Roach actually dropping down places and losing time there as this group's just prepared to just roll in to the finish. Roach on the right of the picture there, a very tired body at the moment.
3:12 down on the stage winner, drops 3 places on general classification. That's the winner, Bugno, from Cuquilin, from Fignon. And in the GC, with 1 day to go, it's Laurent Fignon of France who leads the Tour of Italy. 4 seconds, Greg LeMond still in second place. Gipponi will probably be third, but Fignon won't be far away either. Gipponi will certainly take some time out of him, but it's going to be Laurent Fignon's Giro in 1989. The great French star is back in earnest.
Looking at La Harreta, I think the Spaniard from the Caja Rural team finishing there. Another rider who's put in a good performance in this Tour of Italy, probably finishing in 10th overall.
Luis Herrera from Colombia, big hope for the Colombians for Tour de France. From what looked like earlier on in the Giro, but Stephen Roach will be 9th overall on GC. 1:47. Flavio Gipponi, 1 hour, 7 minutes, 39.42. Good time trial.
Yes, good enough for third place.
If there's only a few seconds between them on this final stage, it means that Fignon has won the Giro. And to my mind, Pat, he's left his calling card for the Tour de France as well. A warning to just about everybody. Piasecki won 3 stages in this year's Giro d'Italia, and in the time-honored fashion, sprays the good stuff. Sigh of relief from Laurent Fignon. Now, how about the Tour de France Giro double?
Certainly. With the French crowd behind him, he certainly has arrived back, and he is obviously totally clear of the injuries of a couple of years ago.
Yes, he's